You wake up when your body is completely ready. There is no blaring alarm pulling you from your dreams. There is no artificial schedule forcing you out of the dark. For 99% of human history, this was not a hypothetical daydream. This was everyday life for your ancestors for roughly 300,000 years. Why do we now treat sleep like a nightly battle we are destined to lose? Today, statistics show that nearly half of the modern population struggles with chronic sleep deprivation. We obsess over getting a perfect, unbroken 8 hours of rest. But what if the way you're trying to sleep is actually completely unnatural? To understand what went wrong, you have to look at the past. You have to look at how your brain and body were actually built to rest. Evolutionary anthropologist David Sampson has spent years studying the sleep patterns of primates and early humans. His research reveals something fascinating about the human evolutionary timeline. Compared to other primates, human beings are incredibly strange sleepers. We sleep for significantly shorter total durations, but we spend far more time in the deepest phase of rest, known as rapid eye movement sleep. How do we manage to get such high-quality sleep in a world filled with predators? When you leave the safety of the canopy, everything changes. Sleeping on the ground makes you highly vulnerable to everything hunting in the dark. Sampson developed what is known as the sleep intensity hypothesis. Early humans had to cram their most restorative sleep into shorter, highly efficient windows. We traded long, lazy hours in the trees for intense, deep sleep on the dirt. This evolutionary trade-off allowed our brains to grow massive and complex. But it also required a completely new strategy for staying alive during the night. Can you guess what that strategy was? The answer lies in the fire in the tribe. You can imagine a typical night in the deep past. The sun dips below the horizon, and the air cools rapidly. This sudden drop in temperature is the primary biological signal that tells your nervous system it is time to wind down. You do not retreat to a silent, solitary room with a perfectly controlled climate. You gather around a crackling hearth with 20 or 30 other people. Do you think everyone just closed their eyes at the exact same time and hoped for the best? The reality of ancient survival required a brilliant biological adaptation. Scientists call this the sentinel hypothesis. Anthropologist David Sampson and researchers like Carol Worthman studied modern hunter-gatherer tribes. They lived alongside groups like the Hadza people of Tanzania to observe their nights. They placed movement tracking monitors on the tribe members to see exactly how they slept in a natural environment. The results completely shattered our modern assumptions about human rest. Over the course of a 3-week study, there were only 18 total minutes where every single person in the group was asleep at the exact same time. What does this mean for your own frustrating sleep habits? It means that human beings evolved to have wildly different internal clocks. Some of your ancestors were naturally night owls. They stayed awake tending the fire and keeping a watchful eye on the darkness. Others were early birds who woke before dawn to take over the morning shift. This genetic variation guaranteed that someone was always awake to protect the vulnerable group. If you struggle to fall asleep at 10 in the evening, your body is not broken. You might just have the genetics of an ancient night watchman. But there's an even bigger misconception about how you are supposed to sleep. You have been told your entire life that you need 8 consecutive hours of unbroken rest. If you wake up at 3 in the morning, you probably panic. Historian Roger Kirch spent decades diving into historical records, diaries, and medical texts from the pre-industrial world. He discovered that before the invention of artificial light, human beings did not sleep in one single block. How did they structure their nights before factories and punch cards dictated their lives? They practiced what is known as biphasic sleep. This means they slept in 2 entirely distinct shifts. Let us reconstruct a typical night using this forgotten biological rhythm. You would lay down shortly after the sun went down and sleep for about 4 hours. This was historically referred to as your first sleep. Around midnight, you would naturally wake up and stay awake for 1 or 2 hours. This was not a period of stress, panic, or insomnia. This midnight waking was a peaceful, expected part of everyday human life. People used this time for quiet reflection. They would tend a fire, check on their sleeping children, or talk softly with family members. Some historical texts even include specific prayers meant only to be spoken during this quiet, wakeful hour. After this peaceful period, you would go back to bed for your second sleep. You would rest deeply until the morning sun naturally warmed your body and woke you up. When was the last time you woke up in the middle of the night and simply allowed yourself to feel peaceful? The counterintuitive twist in human history is that our comfortable modern world is actually a biological trap. Agriculture tied us to the strict cycles of the harvest, but the Industrial Revolution truly destroyed our natural rhythms. Factory owners needed workers to be awake and productive for massive, unbroken shifts during the day. The invention of the incandescent light bulb meant that the sunset no longer commanded the end of human activity. The 8-hour sleep block was not designed by biologists to optimize your physical health. It was designed by 19th century industrialists to maximize the efficiency of factory labor. We took a dynamic, communal, and highly flexible biological process and shoved it into a rigid mechanical box. Consider the environment you try to sleep in tonight. You isolate yourself in a sealed, silent room. You cut off the deep social comfort of the tribal group. You stare at a glowing rectangular screen that blasts artificial daylight directly into your retinas. It tricks your ancient brain into thinking the sun is still high in the sky. Why do we act so surprised when we lie awake feeling anxious and isolated? Your brain is desperately searching for the sensory inputs it relied on for hundreds of thousands of years. It wants the security of the group. It wants the fading of the light and the dropping of the ambient temperature. You can actually see the physical evidence of this ancient rhythm in archaeological sites around the world. If you look at places like the Wonderwer Cave in South Africa, you see the remnants of ancient hearths right near the sleeping areas. These are not just places to cook food and boil water. They were the center of the ancient bedroom. They provided a dynamic source of heat, gentle light, and critical safety. The fire flickered, casting soft shadows on the cave walls. This created a low-light environment that gently eased the mammalian brain into deep rest. There was constant background noise. There are the sounds of breathing, quiet conversations, and the crackle of burning wood. Total silence is a modern invention. For an ancient human, total silence usually meant something dangerous was stalking you in the dark. Why do you think so many modern people need a fan or white noise machine to finally drift off? You are instinctively trying to recreate the acoustic safety of the ancient tribal camp. Even the surfaces we sleep on have radically changed the way our bodies recover. We obsess over perfectly soft, ergonomic mattresses that isolate our every movement. Ancient humans slept directly on the ground. This was perhaps softened by woven grasses or animal skins, as seen in the 70,000-year-old bedding discovered at Sabudu Cave in South Africa. Sleeping on firmer, varied surfaces actually forced the body to shift positions more frequently during the night. This natural, continuous movement stimulated blood flow. It prevented the deep tissue compression we now try to solve with expensive memory foam. We have engineered every ounce of natural friction out of our modern sleep environments. But in doing so, we have engineered out the very biological signals our bodies need to understand that we are safe. It is time to stop judging your own sleep through the rigid lens of industrial productivity. The way you sleep is not a math equation to be perfectly solved. It is a biological rhythm meant to be experienced. If you take a long time to fall asleep, do not panic. You might just have a delayed biological clock that once kept your family safe from lions. If you wake up in the middle of the night, your body is simply echoing the ancient rhythm of the first and second sleep. You're not a machine designed to power down for exactly 8 hours and reboot at the sound of a buzzer. You're a biological organism that evolved to sleep dynamically, socially, and in tune with the turning of the earth. By understanding how your ancestors rested, you can stop fighting your own biology. The next time you wake up in the dark, Do not immediately reach for your phone to check the time. Let yourself lie there for a moment. Listen to the quiet sounds of your environment. Remember that countless generations of your ancestors saw this midnight waking as a gift of quiet time. It was never a medical failure. You can take comfort in knowing that your ancient instincts are still alive inside you, waiting to be understood. You wake up when your body is completely ready.